All right, guys, you are going to see why the folks at н8н do not prefer that people run this as a node option. They prefer Docker. When you see how much easier this is going to make your life, then you'll be like, oh my God, why would I ever do the other option? But I wanted to give the other option because honestly, that's how I run it. But that's not for everybody. I needed to have a little bit more control for other reasons, and Docker provides an extra layer, but I'm going to provide you three different ways to run this, and one of the three ways how to fix it. So the stupid simple way is to do this. We come over to images. Hopefully you're familiar with Docker. If you're not, then this is going to be a little intimidating because I'm not going to go through each and every component of Docker, but suffice to say, to give a very little background, you can ignore builds unless you're a developer. You're going to write code that would build an image, and we're not doing that here. Volumes, we're not going to do that here either, but we are going to map a drive. And one of the options, I'm going to show you how to map a portion or a folder on your computer to a folder inside of the container. And the reason for that is that we want to be able to access the database without having to go inside the container. So mapping a folder in the container to your local drive makes it so much easier that you don't have to use Docker to get in and do what you need to do, especially when we get into the area where we talk about accessing databases. So anyway, these images is the crux of everything. So images and container is where everything's at for what we're going to show you today. Images are the base image. So when you install Windows, you have to install a CD. Just think of an image like a CD. It is the part that you need in order to turn it on in your machine or to install it in your Docker instance. Now, you can get Docker Desktop from docker.com. If you're a business, it's not free. You have to license it. So what you can do on Windows, if you're a business and you're working for a company, you can use something called WSL. Now, WSL is Windows Linux, essentially, and you can install the Docker runtime on that WSL Linux box or Linux instance. You'll have to, it is beyond the scope of this course. But bottom line, suffice to say, you can run it that way, but then to run it on your machine, instead of using Docker Desktop, there is something called Podman. And Podman allows you to run containers from images. So if you can't run Docker Desktop and you have an image or you get the image, you can also use Podman to run your the image. And in this case, you can have a container run from the container store. Now, right now, I don't have n8n anywhere here, but I could go look here at, let's see, I think they have a link. I don't use this that much because I do use Docker Desktop. But if I go to images, let's see if we try to import container machine. Yeah, I guess you can import it from Docker, but I don't think it's connected to the Docker registry. I'll have to double check on this, and if so, I'll either do a supplemental video or maybe put some instructions to this video. But as far as I know, you have to have the image running locally, or you at least have to have the image downloaded. And minimally, you need to get it from the Docker container. So load. Sorry, I'm trying to. Docker's so quick and easy. I'm digressing. So this is all build stuff. All right, I'm going to go away from here. I'm sure there's a way to pull it down. I just don't know how to do it on the fly. Anyway, this video is about Docker. It's not about Podman. So all you do is type in н8н, and the first one that comes up is the н8n.io, because that's the website, n8n.io, and then /n8n. All you do is pull it down. Okay, now I got a super fast internet. It's not mega fast, but it's fairly fast. So I get about almost a half a gigabyte or 500 megabytes down. And so that comes down pretty quick. All right, now here's part of the problem. If you don't do anything and you just click play and you don't do anything here as well, and you hit run, what you're going to do is you're going to get all this gobbledygook. And you're like, well, what's going on? And it says the editor is now accessible via, and then you click this, whoops, it opened up on another screen. And it's telling you, hey, oh, by the way, here, you can go ahead and sign in and do whatever, right? Or you'll get that registration screen. And so that's all well and good. But the bottom line is this container is now running in a way to where everything is isolated, everything is trapped, and it's running in its н8н default whatever environment. So I don't want to have that like that. I'm going to delete that. I'm going to show you something over here. If you run a command line, well, we can break this down. So the -D, so let's start here. Docker run is the equivalent of clicking that little play button. The reason you put it in the command line is so you can pass in some additional parameters. And the additional parameters, we can also add them inside of the container. So if we go to the image, and if you click play, if you don't just click run, and you click this little drop down, you can set every single thing I'm setting here with the exception of one thing. And this is why you want to run the command line. The problem that we were trying to solve with all that hell with NSSM in doing it in Node is so that when the machine boots up, that this will start the container each and every time. And unfortunately, there's no option in the GUI when you click here to click a tick box that says start it when Docker starts. The other thing you need to make sure is on Docker Desktop, under the gear, start Docker Desktop when you sign into your computer, okay? Which also means if the machine were to open Docker, if the machine were to crash and you didn't sign in and you were on vacation, your н8н instance would go down because you didn't sign in. So I haven't tested it per se, but just going by what it reads, I would say that that would be somewhat of a problem. That's why I like NSSM. That's why I do Node. That way I know that if this kind of stuff is still shortcomings, I go through the extra steps on the front end with a little bit of hassle just to make sure that my labs are up and running. And I do run some personal stuff out of it where I post stuff on LinkedIn and things of that nature. So I do want to make sure that it's up and running. And this is okay as long as your machine doesn't crash or runs out of power or you have a thunderstorm and God forbid, the way the weather is today, everything's going down. So this is an option that can get you into a little bit of trouble or give you a false sense of security because it doesn't actually seem to run anything or start Docker Desktop until you sign into your computer. So the machine will be sitting there at the sign in, Docker Desktop won't be running, which means your container won't be running. Anyway, that being said, I'm going to show you what this looks like anyway, and we're going to get out of here. We're going to go right back to Docker Desktop, and we've got the image and we have the container. So let's go back and break down the command line one more time, and let's look at this. So this is the Docker run command. This is the command line, and what we're saying is we want you to run a container. The -D switch tells it, hey, I want you to run it in detach mode. In other words, I don't want it bound to this session or the DOS box. The command line, I want to detach it so that it's kind of running on its own behind the scenes. The name, self-evident. That should be clear. The switch, restart always. That means that it will always restart the container when the machine boots up, when Docker Desktop launches, blah, 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 blah. If you do not do the -P for port, it will run on 5, 6, 7, 8. If you want to change the port, this is how you will do it. Right now, I've overridden the port of 5, 6, 7, 8 to port 8990, which means you could run both a Node version and a Docker version on the same machine. Don't recommend you do it, but you can. And that's how you would do it because they would both be running on different ports, on different platforms, and essentially autonomous from each other. All right, and then we've got this -V, which stands for the volume, essentially. And what we're going to do is we're mapping the C drive, an N8N, to this home folder, okay? And so inside of the C drive on my machine, I got too much stuff in here. I'm going to get rid of all this junk, okay? I am going to map that C drive on the local machine inside of the container to /home/node /.n8n. It's the equivalent of what you saw that I did on the NPX or in the virtual machine, where I had to go into my app data folder. So I went like into C, users, the service account, and then inside of there was like a .n8n folder. And that's essentially what this is doing, but it's doing it inside the container. And then the last part says this is what is the image that you're going to base this running container on. And in that case, that's this guy right here, okay? So if we take the container and we just keep it there and we pop open a DOS box, which I'm going to bring over here, and we bring up our command, and I just Control-A, Control-C, and come over here and just do a right click on, right click on the button to paste, or Control-Shift-V as in Victor. I'll get it in here. Now, I'm going to move this out of the way because behind it, I'm on the Containers tab. You should see a new container pop in. And it was that quick. This GUID is my container ID. And you'll notice that the 2CA98, whatever, blah, 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 that's this prefix right here, okay? So this is done. I can close it. This is now set up so that when Docker Desktop, when I restart Docker Desktop, this container is always going to run. So if I, terminate the server or terminate the service for Docker Desktop and then relaunch Docker Desktop, it's going to always restart my container. Similarly, if I reboot the machine, again, the disclaimer is if the machine reboots and it's unattended and you don't sign in, Docker Desktop will not sign itself in, even if you have this thing set. So that means your N8N instance is also down. You can also see that if I click this, now I get the registration screen, but notice that I'm on the other port that I changed it to. The other thing I want to show you is that in C, N8N, even though I deleted this, all the stuff's back again. I have my configuration file and my database is here, and I do have a copy of a piece of software called Navicat, which means I can then get into it. And so here is that database one. And here is the N8N tables. And we'll get into all of this a little bit later, but I just wanted to show you this is why I do it this way, so that I don't have to worry about getting inside of the container, because unfortunately Docker has gotten a little less user-friendly and friendly to people and developers. They're always trying to add on extra stuff like extra fees, extra whatever. Everybody wants a piece of the action or a piece of your wallet. And so in order to export data out of the container, so for example, if we go to containers and I try to get stuff out or sync stuff out, I can go over here to files and I can go into, where is it, home N8N, home node, dagnabbit, N8N. You see over here it says mount. This is telling you that this is mounted. It's also been modified, something inside of it, and then this was added over here. But the mount means that it's mounted to the host machine, in that case, my Windows machine. And so now all of this, I don't have to go into here. I can just stay on my Windows machine, and I can get in to it, and I can access my tables, I can run reports against it, I can do a whole bunch of other cool stuff. All right, so that is Docker Desktop and how to run N8N. That's it for this video. We'll see you in the next one, and I'll include this syntax here in case you want an example of it attached to the video. We'll see you next one. Bye-bye. Okay, today we're going to show you the next generation server control panel called Easy Panel, and that's what this video is about today. We're still in section 8 for the administrative section, and eventually you're going to want to get out of your personal machine and onto the cloud. You may be doing work for other customers and yourself, and so you'll need to either install this for yourself or you'll need to install this for a customer, and make sure that you adhere to all licensing standards, which is at the end of this video. Just as a quick recap to that, so that you don't have to watch that and get yourself into trouble if you choose not, because obviously licensing is dry content. You need to make absolutely sure that the customer is paying for their own hosting. If you are caught by н8н creating an account or owning an account where you are hosting the customer's instance and that whatever hosting platform mechanism account is in your name, then you are technically providing hosting services and you could get sued. So try to avoid that. If you are working with clients, have them pay for the hosting account. You charge them for your services or monthly maintenance fees or whatever you want to do. But bottom line is they need to be paying for anything related to hosting н8н. They need to own it. There needs to be a clear paper trail to keep you out of hot water and in good graces with н8н. They're a great company. They give a lot of stuff to the community for free and they absolutely deserve to get paid. So I don't think their request or their point of view is unreasonable. It just gets a lot of people get caught in a gray area real quick. Now, I haven't read or heard of anything online where people are getting sued because they've taken an aggressive stance, but I just want you to be protected, and I want you to try to at least think in some ethical terms for the company, because all of these free tools being available to the community as they are, in today's day and age, I think it's fantastic. It's unbelievable. So anyway, and I don't get paid by н8н. I'm not even a partner, so it's just I really do like the tech, and I don't want to lose technology. So the more people that do bad things, they're going to reconsider their position, which is my fear. All right, so anyway, we're getting into this. Now, Easy Panel, let's talk about it. What is Easy Panel? Easy Panel is a hosting platform. So you have an operating system like Windows or Linux, and then you need something to host it. So if you're familiar at all with hosting websites like maybe WordPress or whatever, usually you go into these cloud providers and you're faced with a Plesk control panel or maybe a cPanel, or if you're using the open source, I personally use it myself, it's virtualman. And so these are old school, these go back from the early 2000s upward, and these are hosting platforms. And this is no longer the case with modern technology and modern websites. Everything is moving towards containerization, modularization, and you want to go that way yourself, because as you move between cloud providers, you can just pick up your container and dock it somewhere else on somebody else's cloud. Whereas if you install something on a hosting server platform, that code is integrated into that hosting environment with whatever PHP version it gets. Anyway, the whole benefits that you get out of containerization is such as this. The other thing too that you get with Easy Panel is you can point this to a repo for continuous integration and continuous delivery. You can also upload zip files. So it runs Java, it runs Node, it runs what's the other one? It runs PHP. And so whether it's a container or a repo or whatever, there's all these different things. Now, if you're not familiar with Docker, if you're not familiar with hosting in general, this might get a little overwhelming, but I'm going to show you how to get through this. Again, I'm sorry, but I'm trying to give you the ultimate course here. All of these things are highly technical, and I don't want to just show you the steps. I want to give you the reasoning behind the steps. So hopefully you've stuck with this course and you've enjoyed it to this point because you like to understand the why aspect of it, not just click this, do that, and just blindly accept what I tell you without explanation or reason. All right, so to get started, all you need to do is literally copy this command into your server. Now, you can use these hosting providers if you choose, but these are the supported hosts that have essentially an image that you can choose. So I like to use Linode. That's my personal choice, although I will be honest with you, Vultr right now is the cheapest at $20 per machine per month, and that is a 4 gigabyte memory, 2 CPU server for $20 a month. Linode, DigitalOcean, these guys are $24 a month, and Hostinger is a super, super deal on paper until you realize how latent their customer support is, and they have AI and their AI chatbot, pretty much their first line of defense. So you get no human support except for pretty much 24 to 48 hours. It's a super delay, and if you want to run a business on Hostinger, you can, but if there's a problem, just know that you're going to be down for a significant amount of time until you can get them to help you. And in some cases, you might be a little lost. I've not had high praise for the technical prowess of their people trying to solve issues. Just I've been doing technology for so long, and I could tell that the path that they were going was completely the wrong path. So I don't know. When I need support, I really do need support because I'm stuck, and I don't ever ask for support that often. But when I do, I do need the help. I didn't like that. So you try that for yourself at value. If you have the time, if you want to do a testing, if you want to do a lab, and you don't want to pay a lot of money, Hostinger is a great option. But I wound up having a problem doing the same thing with the firewall. The firewall wasn't working properly. They couldn't give much answers, and I went literally over 2 days with the site being down, struggling just to try to get it to work the way that it should work. I gave up. It wasn't worth the savings to deal with the hassle. All right, so in any event, I'm going to use Linode today because I've been using them for years. I will give some prerequisites. So first of all, here are the pricing. So under the compute, you can create a Linode. And then when you create a Linode, you pop into this Linode plan. Now be careful because there's a dedicated CPU and a shared CPU. A shared CPU puts you 100% in a pool, and if that server gets swamped, you might not get the level of service that you expect. So if you absolutely guaranteed have to have a certain level of processing, then you should go with the higher priced dedicated CPU plan. Otherwise, I've found that this is fairly adequate for what it needs to do. Unless you're in a situation where you know that this thing is just getting hammered, first of all, you're probably going to want to step it up. And if you absolutely want to make sure you're solid, do the dedicated. But that's a financial decision you'll have to make. The other thing is a preparatory thing. I don't have anything else configured. I don't even have a Linode. You want to go aahead and create yourself a firewall. Minimally, you're going to need initially port 443, which is for SSL, and port 80. I'm sorry, let me rephrase. You will initially need 2 ports open, initially port 80, and then over the long term, port 443. So you can tighten things up. And so when it's all said and done, you only need 1 hole open, and that's SSL, the 443. It's only 80 for the configuration. And optionally, they have ways of getting into the command line within this interface, so you don't need to use SSH. But if you do, then you will set it up like this. And you can see I have port 443, port 80, and port 22. Now, port 22, for the sources, I don't have it open to the entirety of anybody on the internet. I'm only having it to my IP. And if you're not familiar with how to get that, you literally just type in my IP into Google, and somewhere like this right here, it shows what your IP address is. You can also go into your router and get it that way. I find it easier just to go to Google and get it from there. But anyway, you pop it in there, and now what happens is only my computer, only my home is allowed to access this server, or any server that has this firewall attached to it, and then I can get in with a command line using traditional command line tools. Like I use PuTTY here. It looks like this little thing here. You configure it to get into whatever. Anyway, the point is, minimally you need 80 and 443, and then you can circle back when your server is installed and delete it. So we're going to get started with creating a Linode. We go to Linode, and by the way, Linode used to be a company. It's been bought out by, I'm going to butcher the name, I'm sure, Akami or something like that. In any event, you'll go ahead, you'll create your Linode. Remember I told you under the shared GPU, I'm in the Metro Atlanta region, and I'll choose the Ubuntu model. You have these other models that you can choose from. I just choose the LTS because it's the latest, best, normal, proven, stable one. Anyway, my Linode, I'm going to do 4 gigabytes and 2 CPU, and you can see my monthly cost is $24. It comes with an 80 gigabyte disk. Again, 4.2 configuration, and I get 4 terabytes of transfer, which is typically enough for me, and I'm just going to go off to the races with this. The Linode label is fine. The tagging, I can do н8н if you want to do cost control. I don't have any placement groups, so I don't need to deal with that. Yep. And then security, SSH keys, I've got a couple here already established. You don't have to do that, or you could add an SSH key. If you're not familiar with SSH keys, you can use PuTTY again, and PuTTY, it comes with a thing called PuTTyGen. So PuTTyGen is not PuTTY, but when you download PuTTY, you get both of these utilities. Anyway, what PuTTyGen does is it builds you a key, and anyway, when you build the key out, you can come back here and you can add that key and you can upload it. And the nice thing about it is when you have a single key, you can use it with any of the servers that you want. And this is passwordless, so you don't have to remember a password, you just need to have your key. And when you upload the key and bind it to your Linode, like you're doing it here, then you simply just use your PuTTY terminal, or whatever terminal, SSH terminal, with the SSH key, and again, it's passwordless, you're in. So I'm going to use that there. Again, you can also log in with the terminal that's here. I don't have a VPC, so I'm not going to assign one. I do have a firewall, so let's pick our primary firewall. And then here's the VLAN, all this other stuff, all these extra add-ons. Now, if you're doing this in production, absolutely check this box. It's completely worth it. And so if you do something absolutely horrendous and screw up, you will have a way of rolling back your machine. Unfortunately, you'll lose your data, so before you roll it back, if you can get into the machine, if you can back up your н8н configuration, that would be helpful. Another thing you could do is you could bind that trick like you saw me do inside of the Docker container. You can do something similar, and you can get an extra disk and then make this so that the entire machine has a mounted external drive. So they do have storage, and you can bind or mount storage inside of the Linode instance that you're using. Anyway, I'm not doing any of that. I'm keeping it fairly straightforward, and it's easy enough to simply just back up the directory if you so choose. But you also have this full backup, and you could restore the backup to a different, brand new, fresh Linode just to go in and get access to the database file in the worst case scenario. In any event, going off on a tangent on stuff that most of you will never need. Okay, root security password. Let's pick this, and I'm going to copy this, and let's remove and paste. And let me go ahead and grab Notepad++ so that I can paste in this password for good keeping, just in case we need it later, and we will. Okay, all that looks good. Create Linode. And now off to the races this will go. It says your Linode is being created, so we'll just kind of hang out and wait. SMTP ports may be restricted. Yeah, all that's well and good. You can see up the top here it's provisioning. So I am going to pause the video and we'll come back when this is done provisioning. All right, we're on the downstretch. The provisioning is done and it is booting up. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to copy off of this IP address, and I'm also going to put this in my Notepad++. Matter of fact, I'm going to get this out of here. We'll create a new one. We'll close this because it was a file. No, yep. All right. So now that we've got that off to the side, this is up and running, and all we have is just a blank machine. So here is the launch list controller, and this allows us to get into the Linode. And so at this point, we'll just need to log in, and the access information that you need is right here. So you'll need to use root at, and then this, we're already in on the cloud. I don't remember if I have to use the at IP address when I'm already in the machine at the Linode area. And in case you're wondering how I'm typing in the password, I use Control, Shift, and V, or I believe you can click with the left mouse button, and I'm sorry, the right mouse button, and then just hit enter. And I am in PWD for print working directory, and I am in the root folder, and so I'm in Linode in the Ubuntu, and you can see that this is the Ubuntu. So this is apt get, or rather we'll just run apt update, because we want to make sure we've got all of the updates up to date. And this is fairly lickety split forward. And this is just like running Windows updates. It's just good housekeeping. And there are a package that you can use that'll do this, or you can create a SH script file and literally create what's called a cron. It's like Windows Task Scheduler, and then it'll run periodically. Bad thing is the updates will run automatically without you knowing it. And sometimes updates do break your server. Not always, but there is a risk, and I have had it happen a couple of times. So it's up to you. I like to kind of just do it myself, but it is a maintenanceable item, and you will have to remember to do it. So you'll have to set a reminder. So now that I've done apt update, I need to apt upgrade because I do have 126 packages that need to go in. And because I am the root user, if you're familiar with Linux already, you may be inclined to write or use sudo. And in this use case, because I'm root and I'm already logged in, I don't need to use it. I am the root user already. And so I could have done the Y switch. Anyway, this is all basically brought down into Linux. So this is what I was saying. In your firewall, you don't need port 22 open, because as long as you can get into your Linode account, you can still get into the terminal. But if you don't want to go into the web, you don't want to log in here, and you literally just want to open PuTTY, double click, and you're in, then that saves you a lot of clicking, a lot of steps. And so personally, I do it because I just like to use a lot less clicks if I don't have to do it. All right, so while this is running, once this is done, we're good to go. And we're going to need to just literally copy this command, and I'm going to paste it up here just to make sure it is on my clipboard. And that's all you need to do. You just need to run this once this is done. So we'll come back over to here, bring back our terminal, or try to bring back our terminal. There we go. It's still chugging away. We're almost down 83, 84%. Bum, bum, bum. Okay. 95, like watching paint dry. All right, here we go. This is one of these issues where you run into possible conflicts, and if you choose the wrong one, you could take your machine down. So I always got to take time to read this as a new version of the configuration, OpenSSH server. I'll just keep the, let's see, install the package maintainers version, keep the local version installed. So normally I don't have this issue, but because Linode may have done something special that would break what I'm using right now, I'm inclined to keep the local version currently installed. Because I don't know, this is something that I would ask Linode. On this particular instance, it says, hey, listen, should I choose the package maintainers, or should I keep the local one? Because I don't want to break the ability to use this. So it's these little type of nuancy things. So anyway, I'm going to play it safe. I'll just keep the local version for right now. That way I don't lock myself out, because I don't want to make the video longer than I need to and have to configure my PuTTY to get into here. I'm surprised that they don't have images that are a little bit more clean. That was a lot of updates for a fresh new machine. All right, to clear my site here or whatever. Again, Control Shift V, that will paste in that command, and hit enter. And now this is literally installing the easy panel. It doesn't get much easier than this. So I'm going to keep this portion in real time because there's a lot of stuff that's going on. Now, one of the things that will happen initially when we set up this server is that we're going to have to get into it potentially from an IP address. And this is what we'll need to do. It's port 3000, which is going to require us to go and open up a port 3000 on our server. Okay, so I'm going to have to pop over to the firewall, and I'm going to have to go into the firewall. And I'm going to add an inbound rule, and this is just going to be temporary. So for preset, I don't want a rule preset. Let's see here. Protocol TCP port is going to be 3000. And let's see. I don't know why that didn't stick. 3000. Why is this We'll just call this easy custom 3000 all IPv4 and 6 and accept. Okay, easy PANEL. Add rule. Okay, that's good there. That should be enough to get us in. I'm trying to find that terminal window and the copy. All right, forget it. I have the IP address over here. We'll go to here, :3000. Let me just force it to HTTP in case that's a problem. Okay, it says it's up and running. Stop, reload. I'm wondering if the firewall hasn't taken, oh, save changes. Yeah, might help if you save your change. All right, let's stop, let's reload. There we go. So, takeaway, make sure you save your change. Got bit. I saved it from the config, but it didn't save it at the firewall level. Okay, so this is the setup. Here, you should set it up in any which way you want. I'm going to go ahead and set it up here with some, here, let's see. And what did we use on the other one? N8N admin or something? I will just do the same thing here. So we'll do, I'm going to choose my own. N8N, actually, let's do some case sensitive stuff, and let's see if we can show this. N8N-ADMIN. Why is it not? It should be showing the whatever. Boy, I hope I typed that right. Who knows? Let's see. Yes, I agree. I want to receive no. Okay. Not now. All right. So this is the easy panel. It's up and running. There is a couple of maintenanceable things that you're going to want to do to finish setting up your server. So here you can buy a license if you so choose. I don't need for what I'm doing. If you're a company and you want multiple people in this, then you'll probably want to buy the license. I'll let you check out all of that, and the pricing as it is here. It's not unreasonable, but if it's just one user, you don't need it. Okay, so under the easy panel, under the settings, under the general, this is where you configure all of your easy panel stuff. This is where you get into the, here's in easy panel, you can also get to the console at the server level, and you can reboot your server here, or you can do it at the Linode level layer as well. Here's all your, now, as you do your Docker containers, you want to make sure you clean up any build containers occasionally. There are system jobs to do this, but I have found that it's better to, I don't know what happened over there. Save. Looks like this got filled out weird or wonky. Anyway, so there's that there. Okay, the other thing here is this, right? So say serve on the IP address. Well, I don't want to serve that on the IP address from here on out. I want to use a custom domain. So here we go. I am over here under the Georgia Digital Profiles domain, and I am going to add a record, and I'm going to call this one class, and I'm going to pop in the IP address of the easy panel server, which is the 23.239 blah blah blah. Okay, that's an A record of type, and we'll hit save. All right, so class.georgiadigitalprofiles.com is going to be our domain, and I'm going to save this. All right, so now with that saved, let's see what we're going to get. Let's see if we can go and get to that panel. And we do. We get to there, okay? So let's turn this off, hit save. So now that we'll break this over here. Additionally, we want to go back over to this and get rid of that port in the firewall and save changes. We don't need that anymore. And at this point, you can circle around. You can delete this. If you have this, you can delete this, or you don't need to create it. So all we need is this port 443. And then from here on out, we just go to class.georgiadigitalprofiles.com. And let's see which one. It was this one, and it's not showing the password, so hopefully I remember how I typed it. N8N-ADMIN. Oh boy. I'm going to pause because I got to figure this out. Okay, I was able to figure it out, and my password, I did remember it correctly, but what, I don't know if you remember, when I tried to fix my email address, when I was in the general area, somehow my username was changed, and I had to do this for my email login, so that was scary, but I did fix the email here. Now I just need to come over here to the users and see .co. In any event, I should be able to fix this for here, but I don't see a way of changing that admin user. I may have to go into the database for easy panel and change that, and I'll have to figure that part out a little bit later. But in any event, I know how to get in, and it's okay for now. The Let's Encrypt email is good and working, and I am on a secured SSH, not a SSH, I am on a secured certificate, so the server is being protected with SSL. So all of this is good. Now, let's just go ahead and tell you some of the limitations of the free version. So with the free version, you only get 3 projects. But for the most part, you only need 1 project, unless you're going to do this, always 1 lowercase. For the most part, you'll only need the 1 project because you can put all your servers. Now, if you're doing this in a real case, you might put projects for whatever project you're working on. But by and large, I've found that just using a main project does this just fine. Okay. Now, with this being said, now that we have a project, we can click into the main project. And now what we're going to do is we're going to add a template. And if we just find н8н and search for it, it's here. This is how hard it is to do and create it. Okay. So I'm just going to do this with н8н. Now, this has been rolled out with a tested specific version of н8н. Okay, I removed the colon and the hard-coded version number. This goes back to the Docker image. Okay, so when I showed you Docker desktop, let me see if I can bring this up again, and we go into images and we search н8н. This is н8н, and these are all of the variations and flavors of whatever. So this right here, the images, is what this is here. And by doing just this, I should be getting just the latest. And it says н8н was created successfully. I can go to the project, and now you can see that it's starting. So once the server comes up and starts, then what we can do is I will show you how to get into н8н, and it's literally as simple as this. Now, remember the rigmarole? Even on Docker Desktop, there was a little bit of trickery with that one, that you have to stop the container, delete the container, update the image, redeploy the container. That was a lot of steps, but nowhere near as many of the steps as hosting it on Windows machine with the service account and all that craziness. But if you want to do it, that's how you do it. And good, this is done. So let me finish my train of thought here. If you are going to update н8н to the latest version on EasyPanel, this is how hard it is. You stop the server, you press the deploy button, you start the server. It's as simple as that. It doesn't get any easier than that. That's why it's called EasyPanel. Okay, let's look at a couple of the configurations for н8н. Okay, so this is like kind of the main area, and this is the log. This is something you can watch in real time, scroll by. As you can see, it says it's now accessible. And let's talk about icons. This deploys the server from that image, and because I didn't specify a specific version on the image, it's always just going to go out and grab the latest. That's why you can now just hit the deploy button. That's the caveat. I can't state this enough. If you don't change that number at the end of it, and you forget every time you stop and deploy, it's never going to deploy anything other than that version. So it's a way of locking in and being stable. If you know there's a stable image of the container, go ahead and just continue to use that. All right, the other thing to note here is this is a stop and start. This will allow you to restart. This allows you to look at the logs, but we're already there. This gets you into the console of the container. Okay, remember earlier I showed you under the dashboard, settings, under server, there was a console. This console is at the Linode level, the Linux level, the Ubuntu level, the root level, everything you saw that I did on the onset of this video. However, when you want to get into the container, it's no different than being in this and going into a container and going in and then getting into the command line. You're in the containers console. So if I go back over to here, that's what this console is when you're in this mode. The other thing, this is a nice, quick, short, easy thing. You've seen this before a million times. I'm not going to register because you can see that it's up and running. It has this weird, funky domain that it gives you, which you can leave because it's security by obscurity, I guess, right? Because nobody ever is going to suspect that it goes here. But your webhooks are going to look wonky because the webhooks are going to take on that domain. I'll show you how to fix that in just a minute. Here is a way of force rebuilding the project, but in this use case, we didn't build it. We're using it from a source, and I'll show you how to change that in the event that you want to change that, because maybe you forgot to change the version and you don't want to delete and destroy the container, and you simply just want to update the source. All right, so that is all of these areas in image here. So we'll leave it there. Now I want to focus your attention to the left lower sidebar. The overview, this is where we are now. The source is where you change the source, okay? So right now we're using a Docker image. I told you, if you forgot to change this initially, right? Here's н8н latest. If you do it like this, it's the same as like н8н latest. Right now we're using a Docker image and we're naming the image. And this is coming from the public Docker registry, okay? So if you have your own personal registry and you wanted to deploy other things besides н8н, you need to make sure that you have your image up in a public Docker registry, and then you can deploy yourself from here. Aside of н8n, you could upload your own files, you can tie it to GitHub, you can use Git, not GitHub, or if you have your own Docker file, you can copy and paste the content of the Docker file here, and this becomes the source, and it will build your image each and every time. So this is all based on Docker. This whole thing is about Docker. Otherwise, if you use the upload, then you're just dealing with code, and now you're talking, you would use what's called nik packs to build out your regular static HTML site or whatever you're using. Maybe you might use build packs depending on what it is, but if you're a developer, you'll know what all of that is, and this is only a video about н8н. So I told you how to create a custom domain. By default, this gives you this. So let's just call this foo. Let's add another one, another A record, and we'll call this foo. And this time we want to do, I forgot what the IP address was. Let me come over here and copy it. That's why I copied it off to my notepad. And let's save this. Okay, so I'm going to copy this again. We'll come over to Easy Panel. Now we want to add a domain. We're going to call this foo and dot Georgia Digital Profiles. With this switch on to HTTPS, it is going to then host up our web page with a SSL certificate for free. We're going to use the Let's Encrypt free SSL certificate. The path, don't change it, just leave it the way that it is. The internal port of the container is 80. So when you're doing your Docker, remember I did, I think the default Docker container was, I don't know, 57, 80, whatever. Anyway, this Easy Panel, the way that they've configured all of this, they changed the ports around, but it says this image exposes the following ports, okay? And it's 5, 6, 7, 8. That's the default port for this, but we're not going to use it. We're going to use HTTPS, and so we just leave it like this, all right? And so now if you click this button, it should take us over there. Let's see here. HTTPS. Okay, this is, oh, all right. So for some reason, all right, so I do need to change that port. I was like, I thought that looked weird. 5, 6, 7, 8, that's the internal port. Normally that comes across. So there might have been some weird change to the way that worked. So if that happens to you, just know that to change. Anyway, a good rule of thumb to follow is all you're doing is cloning this first one. So all of the settings for the first one, make sure you copy it and then just change it out to your domain name. Now I can turn and make this the, I can make this the primary one. Oops, sorry. I can make this the primary one and it switches them and I can remove the old one. So now it'll never answer to that other funky thing. And now when I go to use my, whatever it is that I'm going to do, I can use this as, this should come through without having to configure a custom webhook. Now, if you need to put in environment variables, and you'll notice the webhook is equal to this domain name right here. So that's a problem. So let's come back over here. Let's copy that. Let's go over to environment, and we'll want to update this right here because we want our webhooks to represent our domain name. Let me undo that because, yeah, okay, it was an HTTPS. So make sure you follow what was there with the proper domain, okay? And so I want to make sure, see, there's no backslash or forward slash. So you want to make sure you are very careful to be observant, to put it in exactly how it is. So this is a good replacement with a new domain that should match. Okay, so now this is done. I've updated this, but it doesn't take into effect until I stop the server, deploy. Now it'll reread all of these environment variables when it restarts. So it's redeploying the image, essentially repackaging it. And once it's been deployed, I can start the server, and then lo and behold, I should be able to get back into the server and life will be good, and we can end the video here because that will be the last and final piece I want. Optionally, if you want to add your mounts, okay, here's where you do it. Now, this volume is what they call the data mount. And so this data mount is bound out here. So I can destroy this container and I can essentially rebuild it. This is how you are updating containers, destroying containers. But within the н8н application deployment template, there is it carved out on the host machine a folder called data, and it is mounting it here. And this is what allows you to destroy the container by stopping it, redeploying it, restarting it. So now I've got when I click deploy, it's creating a brand new container, and it's doing it from the image, but you don't want to lose the data. Otherwise, all of your database, your credentials, all your security is going to be gone. So Easy Panel makes it easy. It takes all of this away from you. Just know that for this container, if you go into the, into the bash area, and bash isn't there. Let's try sh, ls, lah. Here's the н8н. So let's do cd.n8n ls. And so there's my configuration. That's my SQLite database. So I'm in the container and I can see all of this, but this folder has been mounted out into the host machine, meaning the Ubuntu machine, the Linode machine. And so that's where all this stuff is and lives. Now you can add an additional bind mount, and this is where I was talking earlier. You can add additional Linode storages and then bind that so that it can be even outside of the machine, outside of the host. It's literally on just a storage container, and you can back up just that storage container. So it's completely up to you to determine how you want to configure all of this. My goal was to give you a lot of explanation, give you a couple of options, but more importantly, get you up and running. So rewind the video a couple times if you get stuck. This was on Linode. Everything else is pretty much simple, but each hosting provider provides their own little subtle nuances on their control panel to roll things out. That's one of the reasons I like Linode. It's very clean, very simple, very easy to follow. But in any event, that is it for this video. This is Easy Panel, and now you have professional hosting environment that's relatively ridiculously cheap and a large enough of a system to where you can put in probably, well, depends on the size of the load, a bunch of н8н workflows and webhooks and everything and anything else that you possibly want to do. All right, guys, that's it for this video. We'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm excited for this video for you because this is actually how I configure my н8н. This is a virtual machine. We're back to the virtual machine. If you haven't watched the earlier video in this section where I set up н8н to run as a service using the non-sucking service manager, aka nsSM, then you probably need to go back and watch that. It is a longer video. Unfortunately, it's long, it's arduous. It is what is necessary if you want to run this in a very reliable, stable way. But that's the way that I chose to do it. It is also, for me, what I think is the most easiest, reliable, safest way of doing it. But, you know, just like everybody else, opinions are like, you know what, so everybody has one. So because of this, what we want to do now is we want to continue along the idea of security, and we don't want to expose a port in our firewall to our home network. And what we can do is leverage something called a Cloudflare tunnel. If you're not familiar with Cloudflare or the tunneling, and by the way, this portion of this is in fact free. What is not free is domains. If you need to buy a domain, you can buy domains from them. But the best part, at least that I found, for buying your domains from Cloudflare is you pay the ICANN cost. You buy domains at cost. Like, I can't stress this enough. This isn't a promo where you go to other sites and they're like, oh, we'll give you a free domain for a year. And then it's, I don't know, $21.99, $25, $30, whatever, a year, or $17 or some deal, right? But they get you in either for free or $1.99 or 99 cents. And you're like, that's a deal. And if you only plan on keeping a domain a year, then, you know, it's a deal. It's better than this deal. Because to buy, I'll search for foo.com. I always like to use foo just because it's so easy to use. Anyway, you can buy a bunch of different domains. And the .me is $14. The .org is $7.50. The .coms are $10.44, and the price that you pay today is the price you pay at renewal, right? There's no sale, there's no special. You're literally getting it for the ICANN fee, and they're so large, I guess maybe they are, maybe they even own ICANN, but Cloudflare is huge. Anyway, so if you need to buy a domain, I would encourage you to consider buying them from them because you're paying cost. I don't make any money from it, so I personally don't care where you buy your domains because that's up to you. I'm just sharing that if you want to buy it at cost, this is a source to buy it. It's where I buy mine, and everything else that I'm about to show you, it makes it a lot easier to do and use a lot of these free tools. Okay, so one of the items that is for free is this Zero Trust item. So log into your account at Cloudflare. If you don't have one, make one. It's free. And then come in here to the Zero Trust. So now that you're into the Zero Trust, you'll have to click on this other tool called Network to get to this other and final item, tunnels, which is where I want to focus the part today. And it says there's a new version of Cloudflare available. To upgrade, refer to the upgrade. Okay, it's referring to my existing one on my machine, and you can see that the tunnel is healthy to my actual desktop, not this virtual machine. We're going to create a brand new tunnel, which you won't have one at all, so you'll have to create a new tunnel. So when you create this new tunnel, you'll have these options. Don't choose the warp, at least as of the date of this recording. Maybe in the future, that'll be something different. I haven't used it. I don't try to do it. It's for Linux distributions only. I'm just going to go with the it's traditional Cloudflare, and then we need to give it a name. And I'm going to call this one VBox, because that's what it is, the virtual box. And I'm going to save my tunnel. Okay, now I have this tool that's here, or rather this command line that I can run. But first I need to download this MSI. So the first thing that I'm going to need to do, or want to do, is I'm going to want to copy this out to the clipboard. So let me copy this. Let me open up a new. Actually, I had a period on the end. I'm going to recut or recopy this out. All right, so this is on my clipboard. I'm going to move away. I'm going to my virtual machine, and I'm probably going to have to turn on the bidirectional clipboard again. Nope, it is on, so we're good. So at this point, I should be able to go into, not the н8н. We want to open up a new tab in the browser, and let's go download that file. It says, Okay, did it download? Keep it. So I had to click the ellipsis. I'm in, what is this, Edge? So if you're on Chrome, maybe it's a little bit different, but I'll choose to keep it. And make sure you trust. Yes, I do trust it. Keep anyway. And let's open the file. And this will get us into the installation of all of this. Or I think it did. I wonder if it ran. Wow, that was really stupid quick. Usually there's like a couple of steps to click next, or something. I'm going to run it again for good measure. Okay, I guess it's done. All right, so I'm going to come over here. And now I'm going to copy this to the clipboard. And I'm going to open up Notepad because I want to make sure that it copied off. Now this long, crazy key, I'm going to run just this portion because I want to test and make sure that this thing ran. So I'm going to do CMD. I'm going to run it as an administrator for good measure, probably because I'm going to need administrator rights anyway. And I'm going to pop that in. Let's see what happens. So it looks like it's trying to run something, which is a good thing. So I guess it did install. I just didn't expect it to flash install like that. I don't remember it just flash installing like that. I thought I had to click next and then hit finish, but in any event, this looks like this is going to run. All right, so now what I want to do is open up another command line, and I'll run this as an administrator. And this time, I'm going to come back to here, and I'm going to get this whole string, and I'm going to paste it into here. And I did that with a right click on the mouse. I'm going to hit enter, and okay, so it did install, it ran the command, and it was successful. Now what we need to do is we need to come over here to the connectors, and its status says it's connected, okay? So all is good, and if I click next, life's good. I'm gonna hit save tunnel, and it says fix the 3 form fields. All right, add a public host name for the VBox. Okay, so now what it's wanting us to do is essentially, when you create a tunnel, it wants you to open up something. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna choose, what are we gonna do? Let's just call this CF dash tunnel. So CF-tunnel, and now these are all of my domain names that I can pick from. Okay, and this is where I was talking about hosting your domains with Cloudflare, because this is going to make this possible. Okay, it says host names required, and if I try to type, I can't just type. I have to choose from a name from the list. So the Cloudflare tunnel comes along free for the ride as long as you're hosting your domain name with them. So that's the only caveat to this. So for this one, I'm going to pick, what were we doing? Georgia Digital Profiles to be consistent. And I'm sorry, I have a Rumba that is running around in the background so loud, you guys can probably hear it. I'm going to put it on pause to shut it down. Okay, so with that being said, I now have this domain name. This is how I'm going to get to my н8н instance in the future. And I'm going to get to it by cftunnel georgiadigitalprofiles.com. And now what I need to do is say on my local machine here, what is this thing running as? So this browser you're seeing here is running on my host machine, not in the VM. I'm in full screen mode over here. So I'm going to close this down because I don't need any of this. And actually I can delete all of these files too. And now if I come over here to this local instance, I can see I can use localhost and port 5678. So I'm going to leave this here so that we can see all of this. And I'm going to leave this as HTTP because there's no SSL certificate. And now what I can do is put this accordingly as such. So you do the :port and life's good. So now if I save the tunnel was saved successfully. And both of these are healthy, and the routes are lighting up good. And if I go into the VBox, now you can, as I light up other different software, as I light up other things that I want to expose on the internet with a record name. Now, here's something interesting on this tunnel. I'm going to go away from this, and I'm going to go back to the main Cloudflare dashboard. I'm going to go to my account home, and I'm going to go into the Georgia Digital Profile domain, and I'm going to go into the DNS because I want to show you something. If we look for what we just added, which is the CF tunnel, we can see that it added a domain name or domain record of type CNAME. So when you do your domain, when you add new records, you have to pick a type. And so if I add a record, these are all the different types. A CNAME is a canonical name. It's like an alias name. And so what it does is it puts an alias name of CF tunnel, but it puts this GUID in here. And this GUID is bound inside of Cloudflare, that it knows that this GUID is associated with a security tunnel that you have. And so you don't even have to set any of this up. It does it for you. But I just wanted to show you what it is so that, God forbid, if you didn't understand this and you went in one day and you're like, I don't know what this is, I'm just going to delete it. If you delete that, you're going to break your tunnel. And if you break the tunnel, you're going to break н8н, because everything we're going to do downstream from here is going to be reliant on how we've got this configured. Anyway, so let me go back to the main thing, and we'll go back to Zero Trust. We'll go back into networks. We'll go back into tunnels. And now if I click into my VBox, I can click the edit button, and this will take me into the configuration for this. Now this is just showing how I could have installed. So if you're on a Mac, you can do this. If you're on Debian, you can do this. Anyway, you can install all of these on this, and this is a Docker container. So if you want to do the Docker container, you can do that. However, if you do this on the machine with the Docker container and you don't install it, it's still the same configuration. It's still the same local host. It's still the same port of 5678 or whatever it is. And you don't have to do anything different. So it doesn't matter whether you installed it as node or you installed it in whatever. The only thing to caveat to know is that when I set up this public host name, so I'll go and see it says 5678, I didn't change the port. But if I was running this on Docker, like you saw that I did in the earlier demo at, what was the port, 8990 I think I used, then I would have to swap this out, because however you're getting to it in the browser is how you need to put it into here. This represents what is happening on your local machine. And that little agent with that GUID that you saw me pop up in a DOS box or command line is the tunnel. And it just secretly connects service to service. And then all of that service to service happens to expose the domain name on this particular CNAME, CF tunnel, out into the main world. So this now is going to be what we're going to use to configure our environment variable to be that, н8н webhook URL. So I'm going to copy this out to the clipboard, and let's go into the VBox so that we no longer have this. So a couple things that we need to do for housekeeping. I'm going to double click into this. Remember, this was a command that allows us to log in as this user. Okay, so I need to put the password in for this user, which is the same as the username, н8н-admin, which will open up a new box. I can close this other one so I don't get all spun around and confused. And at this point, actually, I didn't even have to go into here to do what I was going to do. Matter of fact, I'm not. Let's stop. So just do cmd, and we get into here and we do nssm. Actually, I have to be in as administrator, not the administrator account, but I need to run this as the administrator. So you click this over here, click in through there. All right, now we can do nssm stop н8н. Okay, so it is stopped. Instead of doing nssm stop, we're going to do edit, nssm edit, н8н. All right, remember I told you earlier we were going to circle back and put in and pop in some environment variables. All right, now's the time we're going to do that. So I'm going to put that webhook URL there. And let's go and grab the webhook URL. I got to get the right syntax to this. You know what I'm going to do? I think it's н8н underscore webhook, but I want to make sure. н8н docs. н8н underscore wv. I think it's that. Let me just see if I can search. Why is this not searching? Something went weird. Okay. env, environment variables. Okay, so now we're in the section for environment variables. External hooks. I never remember the category. Maybe it is external hooks. Let's try external hooks. Nope, not there. Environment variables, execution, external. I know it's an environment variable. I can't believe I can't search for what I need. And I don't know the category. I'm going to pause the video just so that I can find a category. This is crazy. Okay, finally found it. Had to click in through a couple of ones that I thought were the ones that I needed. It turns out it is under endpoint, which makes sense, but in any event, I didn't know how to find it. And I couldn't search for it either, which is the most frustrating, even though I put what needed to be there. So this is what we're looking for. It's webhook URL, which is probably why I couldn't find it, because I kept prefixing it with н8н, because everything is н8н, and this is just webhook URL. I thought it was н8н underscore webhook URL. So in any event, it is what it is. And at this point, we're now going to go into this webhook URL equals https:// and then we'll do that like that. Okay, so wait a minute, I have н8н webhook. Why? That's not what I have here. Webhook. It needs to be this. Somehow it didn't copy out the way I expected. Webhook URL, blah, 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 blah. Yep, that looks good. Edit service. Okay. All right. Now, nssm stop ART. Okay, and that is working. Now, I am outside of the virtual machine. In just a second, let me close this down. We'll close all of that down. Let me go into this so that I can get my virtual machine a little bit smaller. And this whole thing is scaling. All right, we'll leave it like there. So we have this virtual machine floating. Here is my, other window, other browser that is inside of my main machine. Sorry, I was thinking of something. In any event, now you can see that we have CF tunnel. Anyway, this is in fact the machine or the server running inside my virtual desktop inside of a virtual machine on my desktop. So this is layers and layers and layers and layers of things. And because the tunnel is installed on the machine where н8н is, it just opens it up. So I'm going to tear all of this down as soon as I turn off the virtual machine. Just to prove this, I'll shut this all down, power off the machine. Okay. And now the machine is off, and I will refresh this, and you will see that now I have a bad gateway. So that is how you expose on your home machine irregardless whether you put it on Docker, irregardless whether it's a virtual machine, irregardless if you're on a Mac or whatever, because those Cloudflare tunnels can be installed on any machine. However you're hosting н8н on your local, by using that Cloudflare tunnel with the only caveat that you'll have to buy a domain name from Cloudflare, but it's a cost. This is a really good option for you to use and not have to pay a cloud hosting provider like Linode or Webhost or whatever it is. You can host this absolutely for free, minus the cost of a domain, but you're going to have the cost of a domain anyway if you professionally host it. So you take the pick, take this information, use it for what it's worth. My goal in all of these videos is to just give you your options on what you can do and the art of what's possible. So that's it for this video. We'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Hey everybody, welcome back. Super excited to show you this video because this is one of these courses where we try to go out of our way to show you the additional really esoteric knowledge that a lot of stuff on YouTube won't have. And so these types of bonus videos will give you some real good low-level experience with н8н that is typically found nowhere else. Okay, so one of the things I want to show you is a absolutely awesome hidden feature. Now let me tell you where this use case comes in. If you are just a single one-man band at home, or one-woman band, and you're there and you're doing your thing, this may not be as much value to you. However, if you're using н8н in a company, if you're using н8н for customers, if you're a consultant agency, if you're trying to show value to either your boss, your company, or a client, I think is probably a better way of summarizing it, then this is definitely for you. If you're the one-man, woman band at home doing whatever, you probably don't care. You already got the value you're looking for. So I want to go and create a blank workflow. I'm going to call this workflow show value. Arbitrary name doesn't mean anything. Let's trigger the workflow manually. Let's assume that this workflow has a gazillion things in it, or maybe there's just one or two things that's stupid simple. Let's save the workflow. Let's go to the workflow settings by coming up to the ellipsis and coming into the settings. This last one here is so innocuous, meaning it's like a hidden value, a hidden gem that is unbelievable, okay? But most people don't know it's here. They don't understand it. I didn't really find a whole lot of it. Matter of fact, I had a struggle finding anything related to it in the document. So I wanted to know what it was, and then I was able to sleuth around further and find out that this is actually in the database, and you can use this to your advantage to tell a story of extreme value. Okay, here is one of the items that's here. It's called estimated time saved, and if you hover over, it says total time savings are summarized in the overview page. Okay, not exactly sure where the overview page is, but if I look for some documentation on all of this. Let's go to the docs overview page and search that. I don't really see anything that says overview page. So not seeing it. Now, this being said, to be fair, maybe this feature is something that is not the community edition. They do have paid versions, they have enterprise versions, and this might be one of these enterprise features. And if it is, that's fine, because what I'm about to show you is going to kind of break the lid off of it anyway, because all of the sleuthing that I did to try to get this will hopefully have some value for you as well. And if we go and get out of here, let me get out of there, back to settings, and let's search for estimated time saved in the documentation. Or let's just do this, estimated time saved. Timescale, configure workflow, timeout settings, missing estimated time saved, missing estimated, I'm looking at this bottom piece here. And it doesn't show up anywhere is my point, okay? So use what I'm about to tell you to get some value. All right, now here's the use case. One of the things you should be doing as a consultant is saying, okay, we're going to use н8н to solve a business problem. What is the business problem? Okay, here's the business problem. Well, we can automate it. Great. One of the pieces of information you should be getting is how many people does it currently take to perform all of the tasks within this workflow, and how much time does everybody spend on each of the workflows? So, for example, if you do Jane, I'm just going to make up. These are very English names. So if you're watching this abroad, which I know my audience is literally all over the world, these names obviously are American. So fill in some names that make sense for your region and your country. But for me, these are just quick, easy things. In any event, I want to say that Jane puts in 30 hours, and these are all hours, so we'll put H. Bill puts in 20 hours, and John only has 5 hours of maybe, I don't know, back and forth approval, right? So at the end of the day, the total time saving we'll call this total time savings equals 30 plus 20 plus 5, which is 55. 55H, right? So every time these 3 people work on this workflow that we're now going to automate, we're saving 55 hours per instance run. So I'm going to say 55, and this is minutes per production use. So that's not going to work. So now I got to go grab out my calculator and run this. And we're going to take 55 hours times 60 to get the minutes. That's 3,300 minutes, 3,300. So each and every time this workflow has an execution, it's going to run in the executional statement or in the executional log this 3,300, because that's the value of time savings per instance per run. Test the workflow, test the workflow. So now we've got 2 iterations in here. Now I'm going to show you some additional stuff. So to continue along the lines of the story, we already know that n8n has this .n8n folder, and I already showed you in previous videos, not going to go into it again, that there is a SQLite database. Now, you can configure with environment variables, and I think that's the next video or maybe a couple of videos after this one. With the environment variables, you can set it up to run in Postgres. So I'm going to give you SQL that works in both, but for this demo, I'm just going to run SQLite because it is the default, and most people are going to have this, except for those that have more production level systems and want a more robust database, so they'll use Postgres. In any event, I have the SQL for both. It is in the resource section. You can download the appropriate SQL for that. And so what I'm going to show you is based on this SQLite database. Okay, it's just a file. It looks innocuous, but look at the size of this thing. It's actually a pretty beefy file, almost a gigabyte, 600 something megs, and I've only been running this for a little bit. All right, that being said, I want to show you this tool. You can use whatever tool you want. Matter of fact, you can search SQLite browser, SQLite reader. So there's a SQLite reader. Here you can download this SQLite IDE from JetBrains. This is a DB browser. Like, there's a bunch of free stuff out there, right? But also for free is this Navicat. Navicat Premium is expensive. It's extremely expensive. But they also have a Navicat Lite version of it. And the Lite versions of it, and see, here's the Premium Lite. This is what you want, that Premium Lite. You want to download this here. Okay, when you do that, what you'll get is this, which is going to be Navicat Premium Lite. It's opening on my other, okay. The splash screen was on the other screen, but it actually opened in the right window. So I already have this connected to my n8n system database. And if you're curious on how to do it, you come up here, you find Postgres, if you want to connect to your Postgres database, or you can come over here to SQLite. And then you point it to the file or the location. You need to know where the location is. Again, it's that .n8n. You can go through all of the videos. I showed you where those locations are. And you find the SQLite database. And then as soon as you connect to it, you double click on main, because that is the main file. And then you can click on the tables. Well, if you stay in main, you can see a table view here. And what we're interested in is this execution information. So every time you're in n8n and a workflow runs, right? So I'm going to bounce out of this for a minute. If we go to this executions, all of these executions are all logged in the backend database. And all of that data gets into these tables called execution data. And there's several of them. There are, we have execution annotation, execution tags, but by and large, mostly it's the execution data, the execution entity, and the execution metadata are typically the ones that have stuff in it. Now, my metadata table is empty. The execution entity has data in it, and the execution data table has data in it. And this is the table that we want to go for and go and look at. Okay, so here is all of the execution data, and this data is really jacked up. I'm going to click into the field. I'm going to go Control A, then I'm going to hit Control C to copy the data out of this field. Okay, I'm going to pop over into Visual Studio and I'm going to paste that data. Okay, now I have an empty placeholder file called test.json because that's what this is. This is JSON that I'm pasting in here. But now I want to, after I paste this blob of mess of whatever, let's format the document. And when we format the document, just that one execution had almost 1,500 lines of code in it. Okay, and so all of this data is sitting and jammed up in this one column within this execution flow information. Fortunately for us, there is a good amount of data in here that we can use to our advantage. And that field that I just showed you has this SQL statement that returns the value. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to choose New Query. I'm going to paste in the SQLite. Now, again, for this video, there are 2 resource files, one for SQLite, one for Postgres. This is the one for SQLite. Go ahead, copy it out, paste it in. You don't need the ticks or whatever into there, so just remove the ticks. If you got any ticks in there, just get rid of it. All you want is the select statement, just like this. Now, this is kind of hard to read, so if you right-click, you can actually beautify SQL. Okay, so it's a little bit easier. I want you to take notice of this, because this is the magic. At least there's a function. Let me post in, even though that this isn't going to work. I'm going to, just for the purposes of whatever, let's see, beautify with SQL. Let's add a hard return. Let's get this over here. Okay, this down here is the Postgres. This up here is the SQLite, okay? Let me put a long line in here. In SQLite, there is a function called JSON extract. And what you do is you give it a couple of parameters, or technically 2 parameters. So JSON extract is going to look at this column name. So if I go back to the column and you see workflow data as a column where all this JSON is jacked up into, then if we come over here, we can see that there is a SQL function for SQLite called JSON extract. You give it the column name, and then inside of this syntax here, you give it the $name, okay? This is essentially the placeholder that you're looking for, or the placeholder that you need out of the JSON, okay? And you're giving it an alias. That value that comes back, you're giving it an alias as name, okay? And in Postgres, you're going to use this workflow data, something similar, name, you don't use $ as name. So the syntax is definitely different in Postgres. So again, I'm going to delete that, but I just wanted to point that out. And so there's functions natively to allow you to get to columns that have blobs of information. In this case, it's JSON, good JSON, and we want to be able to go through those 1,500 lines to extrapolate out this field of value. So if I don't explain it any further, and I just run this at value, we have those 2 flow runs that I just did at 3,300, okay? And so if we look at this, it's going into the JSON as a new field. So we have a couple of fields that's going on here. The first column is returned as name, okay, as name. If I do this as foo, and I rerun the SQL statement, I'll start changing some of this stuff so you understand what it's driving. This first line is essentially just getting the column name, okay? And then we can do it as whatever. And this is show value, okay? And the reason it's called show value is because this is the name of the workflow that it was bound to, okay? So let me go back to this so we can start having refreshers and reminders. Let me go to the personal. This is the name of my workflow. Remember, I called it show value. If I call this foo and we rerun it, we'll get another one. So let's do that. We'll do foo. And we will not save because we don't have to save once we just change the name. And we'll do one more time, okay? So if we jump back over to SQL, and let's change this back to name, and then let's rerun this. So now we have the column name back to the way that it was. But even though this is the same workflow, I changed the name, so it's going to monkey with the reporting. So you'll need to keep that in mind. If you do change workflow names and you're doing this type of reporting, changing this is going to impact this downstream. So the other key takeaway here is that you can log and set this setting inside of your workflow at the workflow level. Now this doesn't work if you don't set this. So by default, it's not set. But if you do set it, I wanted to show you where that data goes and how you can get the data out. And knowing the low-level infrastructure of how н8н uses its database. Now, I'll say this with a grain of salt. I'm showing you stuff that is something that н8н may frown upon, and the reason for that, vendors typically don't like you to go in at low levels to do stuff, because when you do it, if you have a problem, you can't call them and ask them to support you when you're going off the rails doing stuff that impacts their ability to change their software and their features. Like if you go off the rails and you do something custom like this, you need to expect that it's going to break. So you'll need to make sure you have diligent practices in doing QA, making sure that before you upgrade to the latest version that you set up an instance specifically to make sure that it doesn't break your reporting. Because if it does, you need to account for that and you'll need to adjust for that before you upgrade and put it into production, okay? So I can't state that enough, that this is 100% esoteric knowledge. Again, you're not going to find it much in anywhere else of the other courses, but you know, I've been doing this for years, so I kind of understand how software works, so it's pretty easy for me to reverse engineer a lot of things. And so I was like, you know what, there's a lot of value here. There's nothing really in the documentation. Maybe this is something for their upper paid class, but the free versions, the enterprise versions, people can get a lot of value out of this. But I do want to state that this is going to be an unsupported thing. You're on your own with this, okay? And so if you can't get this to work, please don't fire up my email or don't send a bunch of comments into the course, because, you know, I'm giving you this information so that you can try to make it to work on your own. The intention is I'm not going to support you in this effort. This is something that will work as of the date of this recording. I will try to keep up with the course, but, you know, this might break. I don't mind hearing from folks if you tell me that this no longer works, and then at least I'll be able to validate whether or not to remove the video from the course or not. But if you are having a hard time getting Navicat set up, like, you know, I can't support that type of support in this course. So unfortunately for this video, and I do this occasionally because a lot of the stuff that I'm showing here is completely off the rails and esoteric. If you guys can get it to work, that's great. I'm just here to give you your options and your information, but I can't provide the technical support for you. That said, if you do have a problem and you want to do a paid engagement, you know, then at that point you're paying me so I can become a consultant for you. I'm not looking to get work. I've got a full-time job. I'm doing that. I'm very happy where I am. But the bottom line is, if you get stuck, if I've got to get into the trench with you and go through all of this to help you troubleshoot your machine or whatever instance, there is a fee for that. So you can reach out and inquire as to what your problem is, and I'll decide whether or not it's something that I can solve for you. Because if I can't, I'm not going to charge you for it. I'll just decline to get involved in it. But nonetheless, if you follow the instructions in the video, you should be able to get something very, very similar to it. And at the end of the day, you should be able to also explore the rest of this. There's data in the data column. And, if you get stuck, use ChatGPT, give it examples of what is in the, the columns, and say, I'm using SQLite. How do I extract out this, this value from this whatever? It will write the SQL for you, or get you at least pretty close. I've given you the tools on how to find the database. I've given you the tools on how to create the SQL to get value out of this one feature. There's other reports that you can do. So let me get off this box on all of that, and I want to show you a couple other things. Because Looker Studio is really cool. It's free to use, and they have connections to lots of different data sources that you can use. Unfortunately, for SQLite, they don't have a connector. Since this Looker Studio is free, you can also use Power BI, Power BI Desktop. That's also free, and it's a local file, and it runs on a local machine. That might be something of value that you could do. That's another compelling reason to get it out of SQLite and to put it into Postgres, because you can use tools like this. If I'm not mistaken, there is a Postgres connector. For this. Yep. So here's PostgreSQL. But if you're stuck on SQLite, you have a file, but there is a workaround. There's a company called Skyvia, and they do make connectors for Looker Studio, which is formerly Google Data Studio, and there is a paid connector. I don't know what the licensing is. You'll have to go through the site if this is something you want to pursue. But the point is, you can create pretty dashboards around data, not just for the one data that I gave you and showed you how to get that particular data point, but there's a bunch of other data points that you could do. And you could create these really nice looking dashboards based on your n8n data that is being generated in the database. I don't know what that might look for you. I don't know how you want to do it. It's out of the scope of this course, but I just wanted to show you the art of what's possible, because once you have access to the data, you can do all kinds of really cool stuff with this, right? So this is something to consider as well. And so anyway, I hope that this video is helpful for you. We're about at the end of time for this one, so I'll cut it here, and we'll see you in the next video. Good luck and happy reporting. Hey everybody, welcome back. In this video, we want to make sure that you don't lose your data and you have an opportunity to, back things up. This is another method. Now, first and foremost, as we have discussed in other videos, all of the configuration that you're using in н8н is stored locally in the SQL database. So all your credentials, all of your workflows, all of it is stored in the SQLite database. Otherwise, unless you've specifically gone out of your way, because you have to, in order to install this in Postgres, that information will be there. Maybe backing up the database isn't an ideal, and you simply just want to work in scope to the credentials and work in scope to simply just the workflows. Now, I'm going to show you the batch version, but I'm also going to show you the commands to where you can do it individually for flow by flow. Although, if you're going to just back up each individual flow, I've already showed you how to export the flow from the design canvas, as well as simply highlighting the flow, copying it to the clipboard. However, if that works for the flow, it doesn't work for the credentials. And so the use case here is you want to back things up, or the use case is maybe you have two separate н8н servers. Maybe for whatever reason, I don't know, you got a situation where you simply just want to move it from server A to server B. This is a great option for you. And so what you can do is come into the main docs, so docs.n8n.io. So if we just go even to the н8н homepage, and then we come over here to docs, and click on it, we'll land here. You click on hosting, and then look for something called CLI or command line. And somewhere along the side here, right at the bottom, is the CLI commands. And this is what we want to run. So a couple different things. I've got a demo folder set up all ready to go here, and I have a command line ready to go. And so this is good. And so one of the things that you can do with the command line is simply just type the н8н command. And if I do -- version, it will share the version. Similarly, if I want to know what it can do without having to go to the docs, I can do /help, and then it tells me, hey, listen, you can find a command for the help here, which is where we already were. So now we've gone full circle. All right, so in any event, what I wanted to show you is these items over here. If you look over to table of contents, this is really, really helpful. So here is export workflow and credentials. And so this is the section that I want to show you. Now, in addition, this is the part of the migration. So here's the exporting, that's step one. Step two would be importing the credentials, and then your migration's complete. If it were that simple as far as steps. It's not that complicated. It's actually pretty straightforward. You have to run two separate steps under the export and two separate steps under the import, one for workflows, one for credentials. And so this is the command line. So it's н8н export, then you essentially key value it to credentials, and this is exporting the credentials. If we look at the workflows, it's н8н export, and then instead of credentials, it's workflow. Now the -- all grabs every single item in the workflow, okay? And that is great, and that'll just dump it on out to the current place that you're executing the command. So for example, in my command, I am sitting in the directory of repo demo, and if I run that command, all of the workflow is going to get exported right to there. Now, you can export all of your workflows into a single output file, a single JSON file, which may make sense. Otherwise, if you export it out to a folder, each individual workflow gets exported to its own separate JSON, and you can cherry pick. I will warn you, though, the name of the workflow is not plain English. You'll have to go into the database, you'll have to look at the ID for the workflow, and that workflow ID is what it uses as the file name, so it's not human readable. You're going to have to maybe cross-reference that. Honestly, you could make quick work of it if you wanted to put names to it. You could simply, well, actually, I wouldn't recommend doing that, because on the import, it's probably going to screw you up, because now the workflow ID is potentially going to cause problems on the import, so disregard. So in any event, here is what we can do here for this one. So we'll do н8н workflow ID output JSON file. No, don't want to do that one. Let's do this one. All right, so the backup command is really the better option out of all of this, because I want to do them as separate files, and I want to be able to put them in a folder. So if I do this, and then I come over here to, actually, let me bring up the back demo, and then we'll bring this, and I'll pop this in here. And instead of doing output backups, we'll call this one workflows, and I'll hit enter. And it should create a workflows folder, and then it's successfully exported 47 workflows. Now you'll be able to see that the workflows that I have in here are not plain English. These are the GUIDs, or the unique IDs, and if you go into the database, you can cross-reference these to the name, and you know which one is. But if you're trying to do a migration, it won't matter, because you're exporting from system A, and then when you import it from the system B, once it's in the interface, or in the GUI, meaning in н8n's web-based interface, they'll have the plain English names that you can, recognize and deal with. So that's that part. The same thing goes for the credentials. It's the same thing here. If I copy this out, so I'm copying out this command right here, and let me go back to demos instead of workflows. Let's go up a layer. Let's go back to the command line. We'll do CLS to clear everything. We'll pop this in instead of backups. We'll just call this cred, or credentials rather. Same thing, exports out. I only have 17 systems, so it's never well, I guess it could be, but more than likely not, a equal pairing. So don't expect 47 credentials to come out because you popped out 47 workflows. Just depends on whatever you've decided to connect to. So anyway, all of that information is sitting back there. So now we're halfway done, and now you just rinse and repeat the process, and you'll move these folders, maybe zip them up, unpack them, tar them up, whatever you want to do, get them to the destination machine, and then you'll just run the complete opposite for the import. And when we look at that, you're going to import the credentials files as JSON from the specified directory. So you'll run this one, and then you'll pop it in, and then you'll do something like this, and then instead of backups, it'll be, I forget the actual, make sure you get the case right too, just in case. So everything's lowercase. So if I run that, obviously it'll probably cause a problem, either that or it'll error out saying they already exist, because it's got the same GUID, which is why I told you, or retracted, trying to go through and rename the files. But in any event, that's how you run the import for both this and the workflow. So I changed this out for workflow, and then I changed that syntax out over there to also be workflow, because for the importing of workflows, it is also that, but notice it is workflow for there. So anyway, nice quick work of that, and pretty straightforward. Hopefully you'll be able to do everything that you want to do in the command line. And so here's additional command lines you can actually start and stop workflows if you're interested. Anyway, go through the various command line interfaces. It can help you with additional automations and or server migrations. That's it for this video. We'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Hey everybody, this will be one of the shorter videos because there's not actually a lot to demonstration. This is more just a quick lecture. So you saw me struggle a little bit with some of the categories. I got spun around trying to find a webhook URL to make this work. In any event, I expected it to be here. However, it is under endpoint, and so I just want to kind of give a general use case. н8н is super configurable. They have more they have more environmental configurations than you can possibly shake a stick at, and this is, a hats off to н8н. The software is so configurable, has so many features, but with all these features comes a lot of complexity. So you're going to find yourself digging into this documentation a lot. Where the environment variables are, under hosting for н8н in this area, there is then configuration and then environment variables. Typically, I forget myself always where it is. I just type in env for environment, like envi, and then I say, oh, environment variables. And if you click on this little green thing here, it will take you to there, and then on the breadcrumb trails, I just click on environment variables, and then it gets me right where I need to be. So that's how I do it. You can search and get, as long as you get there, that's really the main point. The one thing I do want to point out is that for databases, there's a couple of interesting good things here. I wanted to cover a couple of these. So if you're going to use Postgres database, you need to use several of these environment variables if you want to get it set up with Postgres, because I haven't covered this at all in any of the videos. I didn't want to take the time to go into Postgres because it's just already probably 15 hours this course in total, I'm guessing. And at this point, it's just, yeah, too much. So I think 15 hours is more than enough for a course. The thing here is just follow the examples on what you need to set for this. Now, not all of them are required. Like there's certain things like pool size, you may not need to set this. SSL, CA, you may not need to set that unless, of course, you need that to connect to your Postgres. So I showed you Easy Panel. And EasyPanel was a way of hosting N8N. In addition, one of the things you can do on EasyPanel is host a Postgres database. If you don't want to host it there, if you don't want to deal with it yourself, you can go over to Supabase. Supabase is another one of these platforms that is open source, which ironically, you can actually host Supabase on EasyPanel because they have a template for that. But if you want to just host regular Postgres raw, you can do that too as well on EasyPanel. So, or you can go to any number. There's no limit on the number of ways that you can do this. But the point is, if you want to do Postgres, here's where you find all your switches. And as a quick aside, I want to make a call out to this last one and also give you some common sense rule of thumb thinking. So as SQLite databases get larger, you're going to run into a bunch of bloat that happens eventually over the file. It's okay every once in a while to run this. It does, read the disclaimer of what it does, is it essentially rebuilds your database. It compresses it and makes it nice and clean, and then it optimizes the index. But it caveats it is a long-running operation. So I wouldn't set this as a environment variable. That means every single time you reboot the server or N8N starts up because maybe you did a upgrade, right? I don't suggest you do that. I highly suggest if you want to run this, you run it outside of N8N. I mean, you can maybe set it one time and then start it up and then remove it if that's easy. If you can't do it manually outside of N8N or figure out how to do that, and that's fine. But the bottom line is that I wouldn't do it there. And if you find yourself having to do this quite a bit, then that's probably an indication that you've outgrown SQLite like a long time ago, and you should definitely upgrade your instance to Postgres. Okay. So all of that being said, those are where you find all of the environment variables. Have a look through each and every one of these. There's a bunch of really good stuff as it relates to logs, credentials. There's some stuff on the deployments. Obviously, endpoints was good because there's a bunch of stuff that's in there as well. There's a bunch of testing. Anyway, I myself am still going through and trying to learn all of the different options that's there, because this part is like drinking from a fire hose, because there are certain instances and certain use cases to where you might want to implement some of these. So have a look through, take the time to go through it. I've done it. I'm not going to go through all of this. We will cover a little bit of the licensing and the licensing section, but other than that, that's it for this very short video, and we'll leave it there. We'll see you in the next video. Thanks. Bye-bye. Hey everybody, welcome back. This is another one of these short videos, thank God, right? So in here, we're going to go to settings, and I don't know, I did that pretty quick, so let me back up and go slow down here. So here we have the ellipsis next to whatever username you're using to log in. If you click on this ellipsis lower left corner, and then you click it, you'll have the settings options. And so this is what we want to talk about here. Now, the majority of this stuff, I got to be honest with you, you're not going to be able to use it until you upgrade or go into an enterprise plan. Also, it's another way of very quickly seeing the version number that you're running. There are a couple different ways of getting to it here, because it will also tell you, hey, we've been busy while you're away, and it'll tell you that there's an upgrade. But in any event, if you click on the About N8N, not only will you get the version number, you'll get all this other stuff here too as well. So just a couple different ways to point out if you're trying to get what version of N8N, that's two different ways of getting to the same information. Okay, so that being said, let's talk about this. So usage and plan says you're on the Community Edition, and when you register the Community Edition, if you haven't already, you can enter in the Community Edition key. It gives you access to certain things, so it is worth registering. Go ahead and do that. Yes, they have your email, but honestly, at least from my perspective to date, they have not spammed me with stuff, so I've been very pleased with that end result. But that being said, that doesn't mean the company is going to get aggressive soon. So anyway, you can unsubscribe from all of those if that happens. But as of right now, that is not happening. Okay, so that being said, let's click on Personal, because this is where you will change your profile. There is no avatar changing of whatever. You can enable 2FA. There's a couple different methods that you can use here. You can click Learn More. This is where you can set whether or not it's going to be the light theme, the dark theme, or whatever you're running on the system theme on your computer. I'm running dark theme on my computer, and my browser is running dark theme. That's essentially picking it up from the browser settings there. All right, and so not a whole lot changed there. Now this you can't use at all until you upgrade to one of the paid plans. So as of right now, it's just you. And that's it, and that's fine because it's more of a developer or community edition. But in the real world, you're probably going to have multiple people from multiple departments all wanting to use this system, and as a result, you're going to need to pay an upgrade for that. Now, if you were to upgrade to unlock the ability to create additional users, let's take a look at what that might be. It is running workflow automations without running out of budget. Now, this is assuming a couple of different things. I believe these prices are not for you running this self-hosted. Let me check. I got to read through this because this is looking like a brand new window. I'm going to pause so I can at least read, because I was just about to misspeak and I want to make sure I get my data right. Give me a second to read this. I'll be right back. Okay, so a couple things did change and the layout changed. All right, so let's walk through this so I can walk you through as of the date of this recording, because I'm sure they'll change it again. So right now, this is all based on them hosting. Okay, so here it says right here, hosted by N8N. Okay, and that's a problem because when you host with them, they limit you on how many executions you can run. Now, you can have unlimited workflows, But altogether in aggregate, if you need to run any more than 2,500 workflows within a given month, I don't know if they'll bill you above and beyond or if they just stop you from working. I haven't encountered that problem, so you may have to contact support if you think you're going to get close to that run. Right now, I got a bunch of workflows. I'm nowhere near that, okay? So that wouldn't be a concern for me. So hosting for this price for, up to 5 active workflows is not a big deal. Also, unlimited users. That means I can turn this on for a small business that needs to automate a bunch of things. And as long as I do not go over 2,500 flow runs or executions of all of my flows, I'm good. The problem, though, is the active workflows. And when they talk about active workflows, they're talking about this thing right here. So here's all my workflows. You see how some of these have switches turned green and some of these are inactive? They're talking about any workflow that has to be in an active state, such as APIs or chatbots or things like that. You can only have 5 of them. And so it's pretty limiting. So that's not necessarily a good thing. If you need 15 of them, then you need to pay $50 per month. But again, it's unlimited users, so it's not that bad when you think about the context of what the value this brings. And if you go back to my previous video where I talked about database reporting and setting the settings, like the tremendous amount of cost savings, trust me, this will pay for itself. All right, this again is self-hosted by N8N. These are all limitations, and you're boxed into that. If you want unlimited workflow executions, if you want unlimited workflows with unlimited users, plus you want all the rest of these other settings that I'm going to show you in the rest of this plan here, because there are certain ones that say certain things, then you're going to have to step up your game into the enterprise plan, which is this. And I can tell you from the little bit of experience that I have, if you're curious what this costs, I think the pricing is, so if I do AWS N8N ENTERPRISE, and they have a machine, an AMI machine that you can run on AWS. So I told you you could run N8N in EasyPanel, you can run it in this, some places just have it ready to go. Anyway, if you want to host your enterprise plan on N8N or N8N on AWS, there is an AMI for that. And once upon a time I saw it. Where is it? So here is AWS in the marketplace. Maybe they removed it, but anyway, somehow I stumbled upon it, and I think it was when I went to sign in. In any event, the cost was $30,000. It looks like it was a flat fee for the year, so that may or may not be worth it. So I'm going to use a light disclaimer that the enterprise plan is about $30,000. It may be less. You might be able to call N8N and negotiate some extra deal or something, but if you it on Amazon, it's definitely, at least the last time I saw it, you have to log into your AWS account, set up a N8N instance, and agree to pay whatever their license fee, and it was about 30 grand. And so, like I said, it's around $30,000 a year to get this, okay? So those are the plans. And now there's one other thing I want to show you here. We've been using this block right here, the Community Edition. It's free, and it's a basic version of N8N, okay? Then they also have this other option, which is really cool. If you're a startup plan, and you have no more than 20,000 employees, you can get started on this plan that they have as a special offer, and they used to give the pricing, there it is, for $400 a month, which is about $4,800 a year, a lot cheaper than 30 grand. Essentially, you will get a 100 workflow. Let's just crank it all up. All right, so essentially, they've changed this again. So this was similar to the enterprise plan, if I recall, but they do have limitations on the number of active workflows. So, if you're a startup, this is a way of paying less than 30 grand, but there are limits on it. If you go to 200 workflows, 800 a month, that's 8,000 plus another 16, that's $9,600 a year, or $9,600 a year, and you can have up to 2,000 active workflows. I don't know what this would be if it's over. I don't know if they have an unlimited plan or if whatever, but anyway, there are deals if you have less than 20 employees. That's the key. And then you're back to the $30,000 a year option again, okay? And so everything that I'm going to show you here in the plan, on the back side of all of this, in N8N, this all has to do with the enterprise plan that we're going to show you. So we've gone through personal, we've gone through users, N8N API. Okay, the N8N API allows you to use an API to manipulate and manage N8N itself. Okay, so if you flip the switch and you get a key, go through this, and this will give you the API reference. This will give you what you can do. You can retrieve users, create multiple users. You can get the ID get the user by ID or email. You can delete a user. Anyway, instead of managing it in whatever, and here's the ironic part, you can actually use N8N on itself. So if you had, whatever you wanted to do, you could use N8N to automate some of this. You could look for events that are happening in certain whatever places, and you can automate a lot of this stuff. So just think about the great possibilities that you can do with this. That's really, really cool. All right, external secrets. Secrets are things that you use where you don't store credentials on the local system that you're using. It's more of a developer geeky thing. It is high security, and because it is high security, this is typically used in enterprises or large enterprises where you have a key vault or a secret vault or whatever. And this is going to be enabled for you when you pay for the $30,000 a year plan, and it might be starting at $30,000. I don't know. It's again $30,000-ish plan. All right, here's the next one. This is environments. Again, you can't get to this. So environments allow you to set up things like production, development, production, UAT, however many different environments that you need for your process of whatever you guys do internally. Remember I told you if you go off the rails and do that reporting thing that you might want to test certain things? And so this will let you try certain things, but it won't help you with the N8N platform itself. And what I showed you in the reporting was at the platform level. So I don't want you to confuse, oh, if I get to the enterprise plan, I'll have a dev and a production system and I can test one. In the scope of what I was doing there, that's not applicable there because again, what I was showing you was on the database. The database controls the platform, and everything I showed you was out of scope. N8N is not going to support that at all. Okay, here's the single sign-on. This is regular 2.0 SAML. This makes most sense when you're dealing with Entra ID. You've got in AWS, you've got IAM, you've got on Google, you have Google, I forget what it's called. Google Workspaces has its own authentication mechanism. Anyway, all of them you can configure single sign-on and SAML configuration. Now, this is very specific. It's called LDAP. It's tied to Active Directory, and it does follow the Entra ID or Azure AD, or even if you're still on Windows on-prem and you're using AD, all of this is applicable for this, and so you'll need to have the enterprise plan if you want to have LDAP authentication instead of using the built-in authentication mechanism. So SSO and LDAP are additional enterprise level authentication to allow your business authentication mechanism to essentially control access into N8N, and you'll have to have the enterprise plan for both of those. Log streaming, this is something else that's also available. This log streaming will allow you to send your telemetry of N8N out to other places. Companies, large enterprises use systems like and a bunch of other stuff that's out there, data lakes that can take telemetry. You've got Databricks, Snowflake, I don't know. There's endless items that are out there. Anyway, you'll have to have the enterprise plan in order to participate in there. Now, for the rest of us, not dealing with enterprise, but we want to use community nodes. Now, community nodes are great things. They can be dangerous, which is why this is the way that it is. You have to go through this back door in order to install a node that N8N doesn't support. If N8N supports it, it's just going to be in the release of N8N. However, if you want to write your own, or you want to go on GitHub and install somebody else's, and you trust the code, so I will caveat, you really need to trust who is doing this. Okay, recently, there was this MCP plugin that like I told you earlier in the other video, MCP was all the rage, and so you could install the community node, which was functional. The only problem with the node it was really resource intensive. So again, you just need to be careful with what you install. It's okay to test it. Make sure you create an extra instance. You saw that I had multiple instances running. I had a node version. I had it running in Docker, but I changed the port number so they can coexist. Maybe have one flavor on your machine that will allow you to test these types of things out before it does something bad, or if it's super resource intensive and decides it wants to crash the machine, then you'll know why, and you don't put your semi-production, personal production system at risk. But this is where you install the community nodes. You download them from wherever, you give it a name, and then you install it, and then it's available to you when you're in your normal workflows, and you can select the nodes from the side panel, which I think gets grouped under community. So that is it for the settings, and that is it for this video. We'll see you in the next one. Have a great day. Bye-bye. All right, everybody, I know this is an absolute nasty, boring topic. I don't like covering it. I don't like having to read it, but you need to at least understand bits and pieces, so I'll try to make this as painless as possible and brief, because nobody likes to deal with this. But I do want to call out some things. So call out, go to the docs.n8n, and all the way at the bottom, you'll find this licensing and privacy. So if you click on privacy and security, it will take you to this main menu that I want to discuss as it relates to licensing. And all the other stuff. So when we talked about the pricing and the other stuff, that also has to do with licensing, but more importantly, I want to talk about the stuff about the sustainable use license, some of the FAQs and things of that nature. So I want to first point out privacy and security. So security is important to understand. I'm not going to go into it, but these are the security and compliance regulatory things. I'm only showing you where to go to get this. I'm not going to discuss this. You should know what you're looking for, and you'll be able to see whether or not it is compliant or incompliant, or what you should do. There's a bunch of additional nodes and information here off to the side. This is where you go to find that data and that information. So please make sure you read through all that legality and legal stuff that's there. Okay. The next thing, incident response. This is important, especially if you need help and stuff like that. This is talking about that it publishes the status of the service. So this is applicable to you. All right, whatever. Accept all cookies. This is only applicable if you're paying for their hosted platform. If you're self listed, this is irrelevant. You don't need to go or take notice of this at all, okay? And then, of course, they have their own incident plan. Now, if you're using the community edition, there's 2 different ways for you to report a problem or a bug. And it doesn't need to be put into the platform here on the course because I can't do anything to change the code per se to help you with it. The first option is you should go to the GitHub repo. So somewhere in this rigmarole, if you just do n8n GitHub, there is, yep, here it is. So here's the n8n GitHub. So it's github.com n8n-io/n8n, which is the actual repo. From here, you can file a bug there for the community edition. Additionally, within the n8n area or website, if I just go to the n8n website itself, under community, there's the form. You can go into the form and you can create the form there. The other option that I didn't show you or even mention earlier is if you have Discord. On Discord, there is a whole community there. Now, the problem is you've got stuff all over the place. So you get 3 options, right? You have the web forum, you have the Discord area, and you have the GitHub area. So typically, if I'm having a massive problem, I check all areas because different people talk to different things. They're separate systems. They don't sync by design, but I just want to let you know those are the areas, those are the channels. And that, if you're having issues with regard to the product, that's where you would go. And so hopefully that will cover you on the license. From inside of n8n, if you ever want to get to the documentation, twirl open the chevron and then click on documentation, and that'll get you back to, again, using n8n. And if we go down all the way to the bottom of this, I scrolled way too fast, way too hard. You can go into privacy and security and get there again. Now, if you click on what you can do, this information will describe what you can do with regards to self-hosted users. And this is really just talking about, setting up a reverse proxy. Now, n8n does support a reverse proxy, and if I wasn't mistaken, they even have a mechanism for that. However, I don't like using it. I like using the Cloudflare tunnel. The negative side about the Cloudflare tunnel is it requires you to buy a domain name from Cloudflare in order to make that work the way that it does. So you might want to check out their setup for doing a reverse proxy. It's a little sticky, a little hairy, but it was outside of the scope of this course. I wanted to give the version that at least I knew that worked really well, and that was the proxy tunneling from n8n. Now, you can do other really cool things. There is, I can't think of the proxy. Nginx has essentially a way of doing it. It's a Docker image that you can download, put it on Docker and whatever, and you can do that type of stuff. There are paid versions of tunnels where you don't have to buy the domain. So I don't know, 6 1/2 a dozen other. Either way, it's going to cost you some money, whether you pay for the domain at cost at Cloudflare or you pay a more expensive fee to go with, what is it called? ngrok, I think it is. ngrok. ngrok provides tunneling capabilities, and you pay for it. What is it? $18 a month. So that's ridiculous. For $10.40 if you got a .com. If you do a US, it's like $6. If you do a geo, I don't know, what is it? An EDU or a government or whatever. Anyway, most of it is like $10 and under. There's a handful that's more, and it's a one-time payment per year. This is going to siphon almost $20 out of your pocket each and every month, even if you pay as you go. You can get plans, obviously, probably cheaper than that, but the bottom line is just, I'll leave it up to you to determine how you want to deal with that. Okay, so there's that information that's there as well. You can also do the hosted version and just save a pain and just pay them a monthly fee, but you are restricted to those limitations. If those are copacetic, meaning acceptable for you, then you're good to go, and you can just host that there. If you are my friends over in the EU, GDPR will apply to you. If you are in Germany, you have another extra layer. I can't even pronounce it. It's something like Benghazi, something or other. It's another additional data protection that says you got to keep the data as it relates to German customers in the country. You can't have your cloud and the data stored in that outside of the country. So it's just all these extra governance and restrictional stuff. So just make sure you understand all of that. If it's self-hosted, obviously not a big deal. And then the final piece I wanted to get into is the sustainable use license, because this is very important. Here we got the FAQs, and all of this is all well and good. Read through all of that, and this is mainly applicable if you're a developer and you want to take their open source product and you want to start doing your own custom thing with it. There are limitations to it, but for the rest of us, here's what I want to call out right here. What is and what isn't allowed in the context of n8n's product, okay? So this applies to, I think, a lot of folks that are going to be watching this, because a lot of you are thinking, hey, maybe I can start my own business, maybe I can start my own agency, and if that's you, this applies to you, so please listen up. You cannot do these. Here are some examples that would not be allowed. You cannot white label n8n and then offer it to your customers for money. And this is where I called out earlier. I says, if you are hosting n8n and then charging people money to access it, that is bad. I wouldn't eat. Now, yes, you can do some trickery. You can say you're not charging them to access n8n. You can call it whatever you want to call it. But the bottom line is, if the hosting platform that n8n sits on is on a server that you own in your name, in a court of law, if it were to go to that far, it might not fare well for you. I'm not an attorney. I'm just trying to help you avoid problems. And so I would tell the customer, here's where you should host it. Here's what I'm going to charge you to maintain it. And then go accordingly. Yes, you can't charge them hosting and you won't be able to mark it up and make a margin there, but the margin lost or the margin saved or whatever the case may be, it's not worth the lawsuit that you could get if you fall into that gray area. And then case law, meaning how the case is determined by the judge or jury on, whatever the outcome might be. And as that stacks up over time, you'll be able to figure out whether you can win the case or not win the case. Anyway, again, I'm not an attorney. Make sure you consult with an attorney if you're going to go down that really hard road of gray area. But the best solution I can tell you, have the customer pay for the hosting and then you just charge them your services for maintenance and whatever you're going to do to run it. Okay, and then you can make all your margin there. And it's services, so it's 100% profitable, right? Okay, all of the following examples are allowed, and you can use n8n to sync your data that you control as your company, CRM, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, go ahead and read through that. These are things that you can do, but I did want to make sure to call that out. Okay, not allowed under the sustainable license. This use case collects users' own HubSpot credentials to pull information to feed into the Acme app. Okay, so read all the way through that of what is and what isn't allowed, and this is example using a Acme application is some fictitious thing that they're talking about with HubSpot. So there are additional caveats and limitations. You should keep an eye on this page to see what you get, what you don't get, how to create, but I do want to call out, again, it's under the sustainable use license, and I think this is going to apply to the majority of you watching my video course here. Make sure you fully understand this to avoid yourself in a pickle, okay? That's it for this video. We'll see you in the next one. Have a good one. Bye-bye.